Jarrett Joubert, and at this stage in my life I'm the Kariega volunteer coordinator, and it's been quite a long journey to get to this point where I am now. I grew up in a town called Kimberley, and after finishing school, I suppose my frame of mind was very different, and I think many young people are in that frame of mind. When I left school, I asked myself, what are my talents? How can I use my talents to make money? And the answer to that was that I'm a very creative person. So I thought, well, I'll go into graphic design. I'll become a creative designer. And I was very good at this. I qualified, I cummed my degree, and started working in the industry. And things were going very well for me. After working for a year in the industry, I was promoted to the company's creative director. And I think in a way this was a really big blessing. Because I was able to climb the ladder very quickly, I quickly learned in my mid-20s or early 20s that money wasn't something that really brings you happiness and really brings you contentness. And as I grew a little bit older, as I'd come out of my late teens into my 20s, I think the question of life changed a lot for me. And instead of asking myself, what are my talents and how can I make money out of them, I started asking myself, what can I do to improve the world, to leave the world a better place than what I found it? And the answer was quite simple, and the answer had been in the back of my mind for a really long time. To become actively involved in conservation work. So I gave up my career in graphic design, and I went back to study nature conservation. Many people thought this was absolutely crazy. Many people said you will work 10 times harder and you'll make 1/10 of the money. Those people were right. One does work a lot harder, but the reward of self-fulfillment, of doing something that is more meaningful, that gives back to the world, is definitely a really great reward.
Oh, he's good. He's feeling it. He gets some music.
So after my studies in nature conservation, I worked in the Kalahari for a brief period, where I was assisting with predator care and research assistance in various projects. And I would say this is where the next lesson of my career evolution struck me. Working in nature hands-on is really, really great, and it felt really good. But when one's working in such an area, you're working on a localized scale. You're working on that reserve with those animals. And don't get me wrong, that's extremely important. The world needs lots of people doing that kind of work. But the more I thought about the conservation problems that the world faces, the more I realized that the biggest conservation challenge is essentially a human problem. And one cannot solve the conservation problems on Earth simply by focusing on nature alone. One has to address the human element as well. And when I came to this realization, I stumbled across the opportunity to work as a volunteer coordinator. And I saw this as a sign. I saw this as an opportunity to not only get to work with animals and researching and monitoring animals, but also to work with people and try to instill that sense of love for nature. And I've been at Kariega now for the past 2.5 years. It's been an absolute privilege and blessing to be able to teach people about nature and to be able to see that love blossom in many of the volunteers who have come here.
We're dead. Dun, dun, dun. Let's meet the killers here. Here we are. Here's the serial killers. Tell me more about killing.
Killing
I love it.
aliens.
We're shooting them with blasters and stuff.
What do you think about killing?
It's nice.
What about you?
I love it. I enjoy it so much.
You prefer killing or peanut butter?
It's a blood first. Oh, peanut butter.
You know what I have in my backpack now?
Peanut
Take
butter.
the bread as well. I'm happy.